I started reading this article on Alzheimer's disease. So nobody knows what causes Alzheimer's disease right now. There are these amyloid plaques that build up on the brain, and that was the first thing that was recognized and it was believed that that's what's causing it, but it turns out they're starting to think this may be more of a symptom rather than a cause of Alzheimer's disease. One of the current ideas is maybe it's caused by a disease, like a pathogen, a germ, something that can spread. And so scientists are starting to investigate this possibility. It turns out that viruses, you know how viruses work? Nasty little boogers. They get into your body and they use your own cell's mechanism to reproduce. Some of the viruses, such as herpes or other types of viruses, actually write themselves into your DNA. The thing that I find really fascinating about that is your body comes in and wipes out the virus, and the virus doesn't even exist in physical form. It's only encoded in the form of information. Isn't that weird and fascinating? And yet, so your body's hunting for the virus. All these white blood cells are looking around trying to find where's the virus, and it's nowhere. The only thing that exists is in your DNA is encoded the information that tells your body how to produce more of them. And so then, after the white blood cells can't find it, your body starts cranking out more herpes viruses, or whatever virus it happens to be, and it's basically hijacked the mechanism of your own cell. And it's the perfect way to hide because it doesn't even physically exist. Well, what does your body do in response to that? We don't know exactly, but one of the problems with Alzheimer's disease, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, is the way those work is it's the body attacking itself. And nobody knows why the body's attacking itself, but one of the ideas that's being floated these days is maybe the body knows something we don't. Maybe it thinks that, hey, some virus might have written itself into your DNA, and so it's starting to attack itself because that's where the virus is. Stephen Hawking. Yes, I know I'm all over the place, but bear with me. It'll come together. His mind has been attacked by ALS, and what does he do? He grows around it by not giving up, by continuing to pursue intelligence. He overcame his chronic illness of his mind basically destroying itself for who knows what reason, some disease we haven't yet cured, and rose to become considered one of the smartest men on earth, became a famous cosmologist. I don't think he was as smart as he gets credit for, but, who am I to judge? He did some amazing things that I haven't. Pain makes humans stronger, doesn't it? And as I started to think about genetics, and I reviewed what I was thinking about the night before as I read about Alzheimer's disease, it occurred to me, if we didn't have autoimmune disorders, where our body maybe is trying to attack itself because it's trying to fight off these viruses that are writing themselves in information form into our DNA, we wouldn't have developed CRISPR. We wouldn't have figured out these new tools for sequencing and editing the genome. Do you know what CRISPR is? It's basically a tool that we discovered in bacteria, and we extracted it from the bacteria and now use it ourselves. It's a molecule that walks the DNA and allows us to reprogram it. So we can take particular nucleotides that are located at some arbitrary position in the DNA and bump out the old one and pop in the new one. And this is allowing us to program DNA. So if you study self-assembly, or if you study what we can use DNA for, they use tools like CRISPR to program DNA, which they can then replicate and cause it to do all kinds of amazing things. We can build nanoscale computers, etc. Anyway, what I'm kind of getting at is, because humans are diseased and have problems, we're conquering them. We're using our minds to solve these problems. And I think that's extraordinary because, for the same reason that you guys are being thrust into doing these assignments. Now, if you think about it, you're paying me to kind of torture you, right? You give me money, I give you work. And then you do the work, and then you're better for it, and you realize, and you know it's a good deal. That's why you're doing it, right? And it is a good deal because education's worth it. People don't realize how valuable knowledge is. It's so valuable and so important. Well, that's kind of what society is doing. It occurred to me that this is the reason we're going to prevail. Eventually, we're going to be able to edit away chronic illnesses from our DNA and remove the effects that these viruses have implanted in our DNA and make us stop being chimeras of half virus, half human. And as we have the ability to do that, why not also say, and make my brain a little bit bigger, right? Or give me the hair color I've always wanted, and maybe an extra arm or something. That's weird. But if we can edit the human genome, think about how that affects the universe. So far, every bit of progress we have made has been just waiting on the right genetic mutation to occur. We'll talk more about what that means in a second, but we're just waiting for a lucky chance, a fluke to happen, and most of them are bad. Most of them damage DNA, and we throw them out. But every once in a while, something good happens, and when something good happens, we make a little bit of progress. But what if we could do it deliberately? The whole world changes. All of a sudden, instead of human beings, we're genetically advanced, super-edited human beings. And I could see the future before my eyes, and I suddenly realized that, a little bit of pain's not a bad deal. So that was my attempt to be motivational while simultaneously connecting to genetic algorithms, which we're now going to study. Okay. Yeah, it was all over the place, but I sort of tied it together, didn't I? Silence. Okay. No. If that made no sense, that's okay. But let's talk about a genetic algorithm. Here's how a genetic algorithm works. Step 3, learn about genetic algorithms. I'm providing a little book here for you. Section 4.1.6 describes it. Here's kind of how a genetic algorithm works, also known as evolutionary optimization, depending on exactly what you're doing. But you start with an initial population of candidate vectors. Talk about what that means in a minute. We'll remove some of the less effective ones. We'll replenish the population, and we'll promote diversity and continue. Excellent question. So let's talk about the details of what this all means.
What if you took a super fit one and you mated it with one of the least effective?
So genetic algorithms do that. And sometimes it's good. Usually it's bad. And here's kind of the deal with genetic algorithms. You know how in the first 2 assignments, if you made the tiniest little mistake, everything went to pot and the whole thing didn't work? Genetic algorithms are kind of weird in that whatever you do, it usually works. And that's kind of a funny thing. Some of you are going to love genetic algorithms for that very reason. But think about it like this. Here's Gattaca. I just write Gattaca because it was a great movie. But it's also the first letters of the nucleotides in DNA. Turns out you have like 3 billion, 5 billion nucleotides in your DNA. It's enough that you could actually write your genome on a compact disk if you wanted to. Or it's few enough, but it's enough that it would fill up this board with a lot of letters. What is this? Guanine, adenosine, something, cytosine, toluene? I don't know. I'm not a genetic engineer. But do you see that this is kind of the same as ternary coding? Imagine if it were 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. You could write a number like that, could you not? And, if you were to say every letter represents 2 binary values, then that's really the same as binary. And we all know that binary can encode anything in a computer, so really, think of DNA as just memory. It's just a place to store information. And kind of that's all it has in it. But just to stay consistent with genetics, let's use this. And let's suppose that this one has a baby. Actually, I'm just going to clone it. So now we have a whole population, and now there's a whole bunch of Gattaca's things on the Earth. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting ways this can go. Right now, let's learn the simple basic genetic algorithm, and then let's speculate on how we can make this awesome and complete, I think. So I'm going to punt on your question. Here's a population of stuff. Let's introduce mutations. So 10 million years ago, in a galaxy far away, a supernova occurred, star goes, and cosmic radiation is shot throughout the galaxy. Well, it just happens 10 million years later, and this galaxy just happened to be 10 million light years away. Little piece of cosmic radiation goes and strikes that particular nucleotide in that particular part of the genome. And all of a sudden, this A gets bumped out of place. And because DNA is what it is, it's like a missing tooth, right? Well, what's going to happen? Some more of these nucleotides are bouncing around, and maybe this one pops into fill the slot. And all of a sudden, something new has happened. This particular creature has a third eye, or can't think straight, or something. Now, if you think about it, chances are pretty darn good that cosmic radiation is not going to program this in an intelligent way, right? I mean, the odds are unreasonably small, but it might make it a little better, or it might make it a lot worse, and usually it does make it worse. Almost all mutations are bad, okay? Well, let's suppose it's bad. Well, these populations live in a world where all these guys have claws, and this guy's mutation grew him up with no claws. What's going to happen when they get together? Well, they fight over the hot girl, and they fight, and the guy with no claws is obviously going to die. That mutation is gone. Yay! Bad mutation disappeared. Okay, let's suppose it was a lucky mutation, and this lucky mutation also gives it the power to, I don't know, control magnets with his mind. That's ridiculous. If you're familiar with X-Men, you know, no mutation is going to give you the power to control magnets with your mind. Let's suppose it makes claws shoot out of your fist, which is equally ridiculous, but let's say it did. Okay, well then, they get in a fight, what's going to happen? Well, the guy without the mutation is going to die. You see how good mutations tend to survive, bad mutations tend to go away. This is the principle of natural selection. You've all taken biology, you all get it, right? Yeah, so when we simulate a mutation in a genetic algorithm, here's what we're going to do. We're going to just pick a random member of the population. I arbitrarily picked this guy. Then we're going to pick a random element of the genome. I arbitrarily picked this one. It could have been any one, just based on what my random number generator said. And then I'll pick a random new value. I picked C, totally random, and I threw it in there. Why did I do that? Mutations promote diversity, and as I said here in the algorithm, a genetic algorithm, one of its steps is you have to promote diversity. You also have to remove some of the less effective members of the population. How do you do that? Well, in biology, two creatures get together and they have a fight. Maybe they're fighting over food because there's limited resources. Maybe they're fighting for the opportunity to breed with another member, whatever. The point is, if there's a fight, usually the better one is going to win, right? Usually. And if that's the case, then the lesser one is going to lose and die and disappear from the population. So we've invented a second operation, which I'll call selection. Now, this actual type of selection I've done is called tournament selection. And tournament selection basically works like this. You pick two random members of your population, you put them in the arena of death, battle, 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 only one comes out. Okay? Now, if we look at and we'll talk more about what that means in a minute. Look at my algorithm here. I also say we need something to replenish the population. How can we replenish the population? Somebody's dead. Well, easy way is cloning. Let's just pick a random member of the population, clone it, bam, now the population is full again. And if we got lucky, maybe the mutated one would get cloned, and there you go. I have now developed 3 operations, and it happens that if you put these 3 operations in a loop, and they don't have to be coded up a particular way, But you just got to do all of these things. Have some way to promote diversity, like mutations. I'll just say mutations, because the others don't say why. Some way to promote diversity, some way to get rid of the bad ones and replenish the population. And you might even put these two things together in one operation if you want to, because they're kind of the same thing, maybe. And you do this in a loop for a long time. What's going to happen? Yeah, evolution. Presumably, over time, mutations will occur and stuff will change in these genomes, and all of a sudden, one of these genes is going to declare independence and say, I'm tired of living in this computer. Build me a robot body, and then it will come to life, and AI will have been invented. That has never occurred yet, but we're working on it. Maybe we'll get there eventually. But if you program it to do something like, say, win a tournament of Capture the Flag, it will eventually learn to get better at winning a tournament of Capture the Flag. And what's kind of cool is maybe you don't know exactly how to program this genome, but it kind of figures it out. And it figures out by trial and error, right? Most mutations are bad, but as long as you throw out the bad ones, the good ones will kind of percolate through. And as long as you're replenishing somehow, the good stuff tends to get copied, and this gets rid of the bad stuff. So as long as you do these things, it just kind of works out. Yeah.